Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look inside a neonatal intensive care unit to uncover a really fascinating discovery about the power of a parent's voice. And honestly, it's a finding that might just change how we care for our most vulnerable infants.
So let's just start with a number to really get a sense of the scale here. 13 million. That's how many babies are born prematurely every single year, all around the globe. For so many of these tiny infants, life begins in a neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU, and that's a world that is completely different from a mother's womb.
And yeah, that first world is a tough one. The NICU is an absolute marvel of modern medicine, for sure, but for a tiny baby, it's also kind of like a sensory battlefield. You've got beeps, alarms, bright lights. It's just a universe away from the muffled, rhythmic, comforting sounds of the womb, and that difference can be incredibly stressful for a brain that's still developing. So you can imagine this environment creates a whole cascade of challenges. All that constant stress can increase the risk of neurological issues down the line, and it can get in the way of that crucial bonding process between a parent and their child. It's exactly this kind of overstimulation that has researchers looking for gentle, non-drug interventions, like structured sound, to better support these tiny patients.
And this is where a team of researchers in Greece decided to take this idea a really cool step further. See, they weren't just asking if singing could help, they wanted to know whose singing mattered most. Does the pitch of a voice actually make a difference? And what about that special bond of a biological parent?
Now, to test this, they needed a way to scientifically measure pitch, and that measurement is called fundamental frequency, or F0. The easiest way to think about it is as the core vibration of a sound. A slow vibration gives you a low note, right? And a fast vibration gives you a high note. It's basically the physical fingerprint of a voice's pitch.
So for example, a typical male voice, it's got a lower fundamental frequency, somewhere around 100 to 120 hertz, which is what we hear as a deep pitch. A female voice, on the other hand, is generally higher, vibrating around 200 to 220 hertz. This simple physical difference? Well, that became the central clue the researchers decided to follow.
So to figure this out, they set up 4 really distinct singer profiles to isolate these 2 key things, pitch and relationship. You had the mother with a high-pitched voice and that biological bond, then the father with a low-pitched voice and that same bond. And then, to round it out, a female and a male music therapist, representing those high and low pitches, but with no family connection. It was a really, really clever setup.
So based on everything we know about how babies hear in the womb and that maternal bond, the researchers had a totally logical hypothesis. They predicted that the mother's familiar, high-frequency voice would create the most powerful, positive effect on the infant's brain. I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? Well, hold that thought.
Okay, so how in the world do you ask a premature baby what they're thinking or feeling? Well, you don't. You listen directly to their brain. The scientists used this totally non-invasive tool called an electroencephalogram, or EEG, which basically just measures the electrical activity in the infant's brains while they listen. But what exactly were they looking for in all that brain activity? They were looking for a very specific signal called delta spectral power. The easiest way to think of it is as a sign of deep, restorative brain work. For a preemie, more delta power is a fantastic sign. It's a key marker of a healthy, maturing brain. In short, it's exactly what you want to see.
And the experiment itself was incredibly precise. Each baby listened to all 4 of the singers in a very structured 5-step session. They started with silence just to get a baseline reading. Then they heard a single note, and finally, a full 90-second lullaby, all while their brain activity was being carefully recorded.
And this is where it gets really interesting. As the initial data from the first 5 infants started to come in, the researchers' hypothesis actually seemed to be holding up pretty well. The mother's voice was, in fact, a really powerful stimulus. But then they looked specifically at the data from the lullaby part of the experiment, and they found something they totally did not expect. The data confirmed it. The mother's voice produced the most positive brain activity, that high delta power we were just talking about, across almost every single condition, except for one, the lullaby. The most complex, melodic, and probably the most emotionally rich part of the entire experiment. This was the one moment where the mother's voice wasn't the most powerful stimulus for that infant's brain. So if it wasn't the mother, who was it?
And here are the results. It's pretty amazing. During that lullaby, the voice that sparked the most positive brain activity, the highest delta power, was the father's. And right behind him was the male music therapist. Both of the low-pitched voices actually outperformed the mother's, which turned that initial hypothesis completely on its head.
So what does this all mean? Why should this one small preliminary finding make us all sit up and pay attention? Well, it suggests something pretty profound about the power of the paternal voice, especially in these very, very early days of life.
You know, the potential implications here are huge. This could suggest that low-pitched sounds might provide a unique kind of stimulus that's especially good for a preemie's developing brain. It really reinforces that a father's voice in the NICU isn't just comforting, it could be a powerful therapeutic tool that offers a vital complement to all that amazing maternal care.
Okay, now it is absolutely crucial that we remember that this is just the first clue in a much bigger mystery. These findings are preliminary. They're based on just 5 infants in a study that's still going on. So we need a lot more research to see if this incredible result actually holds up.
But wow, it leaves us with a truly wonderful question to think about, doesn't it? In the high-tech, often stressful world of the NICU, could one of the most powerful, non-invasive tools for boosting a preemie's brain development be something as simple, as ancient, and as loving as a father's lullaby? It's a beautiful thought, and it's one that science is really just beginning to unlock.